Hey friends, well, it's that time again. Kenny Jahng here with the Church Tech Today podcast, and we've reassembled our friends here. If you didn't catch our last episode, it is a contentious one, probably.
More than we expected.
My inbox is still being flooded. If you haven't gotten a response, don't wait for it just yet.
Yeah.
But we are here back to extend the conversation because there were some issues that came up at the very end. I do encourage you to go back to the last episode. But why don't we just reintroduce ourselves for the friends that are just joining us today. Nils, why don't you start up with that?
Yes, I'm Nils Smith from Dunn & Company. I'm the head of innovation.
My name is Jason Malec. I work here at Gloo in AI.
I'm James Poulter, known as JP, and I'm the head of AI and innovation at House 337, the agency in London, hanging out in Colorado.
Yeah, beautiful Colorado. We just watched the sunset. I'm here at the hangar at Gloo headquarters, which is hosting the AI and the Church Hackathon. Now we have over 250 people, 40 different teams working on collaborative projects, inventing new solutions under, what are the categories, Jason? Share with them just the two topical categories for the hackathon.
I think it's human flourishing.
Yes,
so 5 dimensions of human flourishing, and another is
church thriving.
Church thriving.
Right?
That's right. Yes.
Can you just explain what church thriving? What's the thrust of the two different types of?
I wish I knew what the 5 dimensions were, but the Harvard study of the 5 dimensions of human flourishing talks about relationships and mental health, and I can't remember what they all are. Spiritual health. And then the church thriving I think there's actually 15 different dimensions that identify the health and the health of a church.
Yeah, and the organization.
Yeah. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to shake the box, get good ideas to come out, and there's prizes and all sorts of other resources that these teams are getting to help bring their ideas to life. Now, we are all acting as mentors, talking to the different teams and dipping in and out of conversations, helping them brainstorm. One of the topics that we left the last episode on was there's more than one project here talking about suicide prevention and how AI is inserted into that stream of that whole activity. Why don't you, JP, frame it up for us? How are these teams thinking about that? And why is AI involved at all?
Well, I mean, if you think about the broader topic of mental health, whether that from dealing with anxiety and depression through to, obviously suicide prevention at the most extreme cases, one of the biggest challenges is catching people's journey early. That might be through social signals that they're giving. Maybe they've dropped off their attendance in church. Maybe you've spotted that their social conversations that they're having or what they're posting on social media maybe has changed in some way. So we definitely see there's opportunity in AI to begin to detect early signals that people are giving that around their mental health, whether that's examination of language or posting behavior or whatever it might be. But the real solution where the AI piece comes in is also around scaling people's access to information and, intervention. And so, with these new types of AI models, which again, we spoke about a little bit about in the last episode, where they're beginning to have the ability to take on the characteristics and behavior of a certain type of person and reason in that way, we can see that there might be opportunities to, do that kind of consulting, whether that's in a form, I suppose, of a compassionate pastoral conversation, or it might be in more clinical, kind of psychological way, to act as a caring friend in that situation where maybe they don't have access to someone. And we also know from studies previously that people are more willing to disclose certain information when they don't think they're talking to another human. And whilst we don't want that to stay there, and I think that's really important to say, is I don't think that AI is the solution where this start to end can be fixed. It's about being able to use AI as a tool in the toolbox to intervene and then move people in a direction.
What I think is interesting in this conversation, there's a New York Times columnist that has written a book about AI, and one of the things that he says is there's areas that AI can work well.
Yeah.
And then there's areas of AI that will never or should not replace the human vocation work, etc. And one of the 3 parts of the do not use AI for are places where the risk is just too high.
That's right.
The margin for error is 0. So for example, you probably do not want, the football that the president carries with the nuclear codes, right?
I believe it's a briefcase, not a football.
Yeah, they call it the football, right? They call it the football. You learned something today. So the briefcase, you probably do not want the decision to deploy the nuclear, arms to AI, right? Because the margin for error is just zero there, right? And typically in that conversation, you would say, you probably don't want to counsel someone who's about to jump off a bridge or a building with an AI chatbot. What's the response here? How do you feel about that? And why is it okay? And where do we draw the line in terms of where can we insert AI into that stream?
Part of me, as you say that, Kenny,
Yes.
I think about my role as a pastor and some of the counseling sessions I had.
Yes.
And honestly, some of the dumb things I said, the regrets I had, I would leave a counseling session and I would think, that wasn't the best advice. And an AI chatbot might actually have given them much better advice.
More consistency.
More theologically correct, more consistency.
Clinically sound. Maybe.
Clinically sound. And so there is a side where even in this case, I might actually trust a chatbot better, just like I would trust a self-driving car more than I trust a human driver. And so I think even in this case, there's a side where I could understand both sides of this argument.
Well, it's not limited just to the concept of an AI chatbot, because AI can infuse technologies that assist diagnosis, connection, even a therapeutic response. And so, for example, here at Gloo, we actually have a chat interaction with people, and if there are keywords that trigger a certain initiative, we actually use AI to connect them with interventions, therapeutic interventions, instantaneously. And there have been, I think it's upwards of like 6% of our chats have some of these indicators, where we are introducing people to hotlines, people who are standing ready to respond to them. They're trained. And so that's a very subtle and quite simple version or expression of AI, but it's very real. And it has significant impact.
We're seeing examples of this happening in clinical practice as well. So Microsoft, through the work that they've done with Nuance and then kind of Dragon Dictation, ultimately a very old AI technology, really, it's been around for a long time, that we've seen examples from them where they've introduced a form of co-pilot for doctors, so that it's more of an agent assist situation. So a doctor might be in a consult over Microsoft Teams, and they're doing live transcription of what's going on, and it's giving the doctor live feedback that they can intervene with. So I think we can see for pastors in pastoral conversations, whether you're leading a small group, whether you're doing a one-to-one marriage counseling situation or in a mental health conversation, maybe having an AI that sometimes is there as a companion to you as the pastor. It's not that the other person on the other side of the table is talking to the AI directly, but the AI is actually there to assist you in having that conversation and being better at it.
How much do you think that's going to be normalized in the future? So right now, for example, one of the most practical ways that I share for people to start with AI is with Zoom conversations. So now there are these Zoom AI note takers. Right. So my favorite right now is Fathom. Otter's another one. There's many of them out there that basically they get invited into the Zoom chat as if they're a participant. They're silent, and then they transcribe it. They organize it. They take notes, and they even figure out the task list, the to-do list afterwards. Right.
They give attribution to who speaks when.
And who speaks the most, who speaks the less. And there's some that I've seen that gives live sentiment analysis, as well as coaching feedback. Are you too aggressive? Is there humor? Things like that, right? So there are tools. There's one tool where you can load in your agenda, and it can check off when it senses.
Make sure you hit the points.
You're hitting the points, and coaching you through that.
Interesting.
I think it's going to normalize it massively. I mean, we're seeing it in the corporate environment already, right? So big scale rollouts of things like Copilot, for example, or Google Workspace with dictation. It is normalizing. It's becoming much more normal for us to record things. I mean, the pandemic has had a big effect on that. One of the big challenges I see that comes with that as well is them being really clear, and this, particularly for churches, if you're beginning to do this, is really around what your policy is happening with those recordings or with those transcripts. And like I've seen scenarios, we're talking to HR leaders, for example, where it's like, are you going to be scoring your people at the end of the year on like their transcripts from their one-to-one conversations with their line manager? Were you polite enough? Did you pay enough attention? Was your eye contact in the video call, kind of on point? Like, there's lines that we can begin to kind of see that might be crossed in terms of people's right to privacy or sensitive information, or just, kind of using this data in different ways. So we want to normalize it for sure, because I think there's, so much good and help, particularly in these, mental health situations that we're discussing. We also want to make sure that we know when do we cross over to that would be helpful.
So like for skeptics of AI, that I just gave them more fodder for the arguments of why we should just stay away from AI because of, what would you say? How do you equip a pastor or a church leader that has those concerns?
I think the term that's been said here a number of times that's caught my attention is assistant. It's a good meeting assistant. It's a good sermon preparation assistant. Doesn't need to fully do your sermons for you, probably.
See previous episode.
See previous episode. But I think it's a good marketing assistant, and I think it's good. It can be a good pastoral care assistant. Doesn't necessarily need to replace our pastoral care or our sermon preparation or our meeting, management. But it can be a good assistant, which can make us more effective and efficient in the ministry work we're called to. And so I think at this stage of AI, now I think when we get further down the road, it's going to get a lot more complicated. But at this point, I think these tools are beginning to be good assistants to us in ministry.
Oh, Jason?
I think I'll be a little contrarian here. I don't know that I want, and I don't hear you or anybody judging the person who says, I'm not going to do it.
No.
But I do hear you wanting to pull people in your direction. So I'll say this. I don't think it's wrong to be careful. In fact, I think it's incredibly wise to be cautious, to be careful, to be thoughtful, to be deliberate, to be intentional. And sometimes people are, it's okay to wait. And so for the person who says, I'm just not ready, I don't think that's a bad thing. Now, that said, AI is everywhere. All of us are using it.
Yeah.
And so even though, I might want to resist or, not get involved, I'm already involved if I have a cell phone.
Right.
If I have a GPS device that directs me from point A to point B, if I use a computer device, there's a lot of devices in my home that are using artificial. So it's not to say that makes it right and therefore I should, let the floodgates open. But I think taking careful and deliberate steps is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so
I think that a lot of churches did that. And in some ways, I think they're jumping headfirst into AI because they got left behind and they were late to online donations. They were late to social media and then the pandemic hit and they were scrambling. And I think there's now this fear factor of like, I don't want to get left behind again. And so I have to throw myself into this. Yeah. And I think, part of what I'm hearing here is, this is actually one of those technologies that we might encourage you actually to slow down in some ways.
So you think that I'm with Kenny on this, is that, if you're a pastor, you're hearing about all these tools and technologies, there is also a stewardship dimension to this as well. Yeah. So like we were talking in the last episode about church statistics, decline, people, kind of going through lots of challenges financially in the economy and such. Like, shouldn't we, if there's these things that are disposable to make life easier, more efficient, better stewards of the money and resources that God's Word has, I think we need to be encouraging people to jump on that as quickly as they reasonably, ethically, and safely can. But we want to push after this stuff. Like we don't want people to be left behind.
Yeah. Some people though, the other pushback to that is, so are we trying to eliminate jobs in our churches?
Yes.
And so what does that do to now the person who's taking notes in the meeting?
I just want to see people remove the administration of ministry. Like that's what we want to get rid of. It's like, no one's called to the administration of the ministry, right? We know that people are called to help. We hear the Bible talk about that. People are called to help. People to be gift of hospitality, but that's not the gift necessarily of just being the minister.
And that's just being done out of necessity.
It's and so much of the way that modern life is created has been created these excesses. So if we can do anything to kind of claw that stuff back, I'm here for it.
Now we're here at this hackathon. For me, it's very inspiring to see the what I call the democratization of problem solving. When you talk to these teams, they are literally pulling out of the whiteboard just ideas and dreams and saying, can we actually make this happen? And they're trying to make it real. Could you guys share, maybe, are there any threads that you've seen across the different projects? What are the themes that you're seeing this year in terms of the spirit, the approach, the philosophies, or even topics that you're seeing across the tables?
I don't know if there's necessarily a thread, but one of the things that I really am enjoying seeing is that they're kind of reverse engineering from the problem, and then how do we use technology to create a solution? Where I feel like I've often seen people just like, I just want to do something in this technology, and then I'll make up a solution, that it's solving. Like, oh, this is how I'm using it, rather than really just like, let me zone in on something like suicide and how can I help create fewer suicides through this technology?
I've seen several projects that are revolving around media, content, information and finding ways to consolidate, streamline, or supercharge to accelerate either our ability to consume or translate or distribute media and content.
Yeah.
That's been interesting.
Yeah, and building on that language, I think, is one of the big things we've seen. So there's a bunch of projects here that have taken the opportunity to push into either making language more accessible or going across languages. And I think that the power at the moment of technology to help people access in their mother tongue and their heart language content that was otherwise excluding them. Super powerful. So there's tons of that kind of going on.
Yeah, translation was an awesome kind of evolution in media transmission. We had dubbing, then we had or subtitling, dubbing. Now we actually are modifying video to match the audio translation. It's powerful.
It's
really
the
powerful.
Video cloning, right? It's almost like video cloning for good. Right? So what are the questions that someone who's watching today and they maybe dabbled in ChatGPT or they really haven't gone further, they know that there's some opportunity. What are the questions they should be asking from your perspective that you've been a couple steps ahead? What would you tell yourself at the very beginning of the journey? What questions or guidance would you give them?
I would say from what we know about how people are using the technology at the moment, that realistically, most people are using very little of it. And what I mean by that is that, we've seen lots of people picking up, I'm going to use ChatGPT, or I'm going to pick up and maybe use one, even if they're a developer, using one of these APIs to do something very simple like build what's known as a RAG, right? So a kind of catalog of content and then using AI to look at that catalog of content. But actually, there's way more that we can be doing just with the technology that's already been with us for 18 months. At a consumer level, most people have not even gone beyond just prompting an AI to do well. So I think that's the thing I'd be telling myself to do is don't be rushing to move on to the next thing. There's like so much headroom. And I see it all the time with churches who are, I want to do the AI thing. And it's like, your mobile website is terrible. Please fix your mobile app, or like, please learn how to write a decent email. Let's use AI to fix all of those problems too, not just try and create the next thing as well. We need both. But I would be saying, like, dive deeper into this stuff and pay attention to the education that you and many other people are creating, because there's just so much more under the surface level.
Yes, I like that.
This is a little bit of an inception response to your question, because you said, what questions should we be asking? How I've sometimes used various GPTs is to ask it what I should be asking. Literally, like, what should I be doing to better write this document? Give me kind of a better structure.
It's good.
Help me develop a strategy to draft this whatever strategic paper, and it actually can coach me on the questions I need to be asking, or the outline or the flow of what I need to be building. In other words, leveraging some of the tools to help me know what I don't even know.
It can do partner.
Exactly. Be a thought partner.
I think about just practically, it's kind of a do your own research. I think a lot of people are making decisions about AI based on what they hear and not what they're actually experiencing. And so I really would ask, somebody is, what are you doing to learn about AI? It doesn't mean you need to integrate it into everything you're doing. And I always say, just start with ChatGPT, just start asking it questions, just like you just mentioned, of like, tell me, if you don't know what to say, tell me about yourself.
That's right.
Tell me about how this works. Tell me about how I can use it. And then start making the decisions for yourself. The other thing, Kenny, I think to ask is this ethical? And I think we're still all wrestling with that aspect of every aspect of how we're going to use it. But I think we need to continue to, I'll go back, Kenny, to our early days of doing an online church. And the question that people were asking us is this heretical? Is this church? And we perceived, and we were seeing the life change, but I think we also wrestled with that in a lot of ways. And so as we move in down the road with AI, it's going to get more complex and it's going to move quickly. And I think if we don't learn about it and do our own research, we're not going to be ready for it. And I think as we do that, we can also stop thinking and asking those questions. Is this ethical? And is this right? And so I think we need to continue to, as we go down these paths, manage that tension.
I love it. So I'll do a shameless plug on a thread that you just talked about. One is, you need to connect with other peers. We've got a great Facebook community of over 6,000 leaders, AI for church leaders and pastors. Great place. and we're putting out courses like ChatGPT for churches.com that just help people take that first step into learning what this tool has to offer.
Click the link in the description below if you want to find more.
Yes, we'll put all the
There's a banner here and there's a promo video here.
But seriously, I think those are great suggestions that you want to take that first step. And, I think I would just say resist criticizing AI before you even use it for the first time first.
Yes.
And I don't think you need to become the expert. You don't even need to really use it yourself, but you could probably ask a friend to sit down and show you how you're using it, right?
And you know what? I think there is a slight, I'm always the one to say, there's a spiritual dimension to this, but there is a spiritual dimension to this, which is that, we are seeing like a transformation across society due to this technology.
Yes.
It's impacting every part of everyone's workplace, the way we're going to parent, the way we're going to teach. Shameless plug myself, I'm writing a book on all three of those topics that comes out next October. Pre-order now, link below. But the reason that it matters is because if this stuff is going to shape all those different aspects of life,
yes,
it means that if you're a pastor watching this right now, it's going to shape the lives of your congregation in ways that we can like not even begin to imagine at the moment. So I think that you have a spiritual responsibility if you're going to steward them well and to look after them well, is to understand the impact it's going to have on their lives, because it's going to transform the jobs that they do, the way that they look after their kids, the way that you teach. Like it's when issues like this become so big in our day-to-day life, we can't ignore them. It doesn't mean you have to do them. You can't ignore them.
Yes. Well, as we close out this episode, we had some inspiring words from Pat from Intel, Bobby from YouVersion, Scott from Gloo. What's one thing that you just remember as you're taking away from this weekend of the hackathon? What's something that you're going to bring home and says, oh, this is actually reinforcing something that I've loved and cherished about innovation and ministry? What's energized you? What's just one parting thought for each of you?
I'll start here. I think about Bobby's talk, and I've heard him tell the YouVersion story a number of times, but he kind of said two things that really jumped out to me. If one, take your first step, and for YouVersion, it was, that immediately when he had the idea, he bought YouVersion.com, and that was his first step. And the other is be okay with failure. And YouVersion, while it's reaching, millions and millions of people, it didn't do that from day one. And they had a lot of hiccups along the way and a lot of challenges and roadblocks. And just because you're hitting a roadblock with something doesn't mean you should stop. Yeah. And so it might mean it actually is a good sign that you need to press on. And so I think him sharing so transparently that journey and now the ministry success they're seeing, it's incredible. So I was inspired by that.
I'll piggyback on Bob, on what you said about Bobby. So he told a story, and I wonder if we can link to it below. That'd be awesome if we could. But he told a story about a rocket ship that actually they just did a spacewalk today from one of the SpaceX rockets, way out there. I'm not sure, but maybe as far as humans have ever been, or something to that effect, in space, in spacewalk. And he talked about being kind of near the launch pad and how visceral the moment was, because literally this was life and death for the people who were in space. And for really the entire space program, perhaps not life and death, but they were taking people's lives in their hands. And then he looked at every single person sitting in the audience and said, you're doing something far more important. You are creating tools that are helping to build people's eternities. That's a pretty powerful word. So stick with me.
What about parting words?
Well, the thing that stuck with me is both from what Bobby was saying about the SpaceX thing, but also from the stories that Scott told about the businesses that he's been involved with over the years. Yeah, he made a lot of his kind of early career at Blockbuster. He was talking about that as well. And I just think across those two things, like think of the technologies that's in this room today that we're all like super excited about. But 10 years from now, we're going to say that was so like
backwards
or just like we'll just take for such granted.
Yes, yeah.
In the same way that like walking into a video rental store now seems so antiquated. But like the day that Netflix arrived, we were like, wow. And now we just hit go on a video like this. like, what's the stuff that 10 years from now, we're just going to be like, this is normal.
Yeah.
And so there are people in there today wrestling with stuff that, we will see, to your point, millions of people using. I believe that for this hackathon. And whether it's the projects that you hear or it's the technologists that are sat in there is stuff that they're going to be creating today that we're going to go, wow, but like, I'm so excited the fact that that's just going to become normal for us.
Yeah.
And that's, normal can sometimes be exciting.
I love how the organizing team, which includes Nick and Allie and Steel Billings, we've had conversations about redemptive technology. And I think just framing that and seeing how God has gifted us this technology, and not just seeing it as something as other, or that we need to compartmentalize it or cage it, but that God might have given us this technology for His good, for His glory.
Well, it's not on accident. That's
No,
for sure.
it's not on accident. Scott says, God is not surprised by AI.
Yeah.
And I think that piece of that we are here collectively to see that divine mystery of what technology has to offer, and that we're trying to discover how we can actually redeem our cultures, our communities, our relationships through applying this technology, I think is just an amazing thing. So it's a blessing for us to be able to be here and explore that together. Right? Well, thank you for joining us for this 2-part series. We would love to hear from you. And as we part, could you also just share, how do people get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing?
So I'm Nils Smith, Nils Smith, and you can just Google me and find me on social media. My DMs are always open.
Jason Malec on LinkedIn, or jmalec at gloo.us.
Yeah, and I'm just James Poulter on all social media, if I'm in that.
Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you here in the next episode of the Church Tech Today podcast.